everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
Good, James. It's now the second half of the international break. England don't have any games left.
Thank God.
But there are games going on around the globe. But by the time we get to the weekend, it will be Premier League again. All of the players will have returned. Hobbling, maybe some of them, like a Bukayo
Only
Saka.
Arsenal's.
Yeah, of course.
Saka'd be fine, by the way. Lee Carsley kind of said that yesterday.
Indeed. So, yes, we have the second half of the international break, but now we're very much getting our FPL heads back on, getting ready for the weekend. And with no games to review, I should say, we've decided today to look at the next 4 game weeks as a block, because that's when the next international break is. Yay! So we thought, let's look at this as a block and kind of have a look at the fixtures for the teams, where we might be focusing our attention, and if anything interesting kind of comes to light.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really interesting period of the season that I think many of us knew we were going to get towards, where a lot of the really good teams play each other, and therefore on fixture difficulty trackers, they obviously show up really low at the moment. And I think navigating this period, you've probably got a kind of a split camp between people who want to attack fixtures versus, oh, okay, Cole Palmer's fixtures look really rough in the next 4. I'll just carry him through because he's Cole Palmer. But there's a lot like that, right, at the moment. I think there are 7 teams at the moment who I think have got really difficult runs in the next 4. And I'll do them from hardest to easiest. Chelsea, Bournemouth, Arsenal, Brighton, Liverpool, Newcastle and Aston Villa. And I actually think for everybody else, there's decent runs in there, even to the extent of, say, okay, Wolves play Manchester City this week, but then we know that their good run is starting. I think for West Ham, it's kind of a difficult-ish period, but I think for the offensive players like Bowen, I don't think the next 4, Tottenham, Manchester United in the next 2 is not as scary as it might look on a fixture difficulty tracker. So I think there's 13 teams with some fairly good fixtures. There's 7 with really difficult ones, but of those 7, there's real interest in FPL assets where people are going to be holding players. I sent you an image of a team which we'll share on YouTube, of a group of players that are just from those 7 teams. And I don't think it's infeasible that somebody would have, say, wildcarded a roundabouts game week 2 and be sitting on a team just like this right now. So just to read that out for the audio, it's like Sanchez, Alexander-Arnold, Burn, Gabriel, Salah, Palmer, Diaz, Semenyo, Rodgers, Watkins, Havertz as a starting team. And they're all part of that group that have got really tough fixtures. If you've got a team like that at the moment, Suj, what do you do if you've already used that wild card?
Now, I think let's take it one step back, which is, what do you consider, at what point do you consider a fixture that difficult that you wouldn't then play one of your players in it, right? Okay, something like City away that Southampton have a couple of weeks. Yeah, awful. But I think I hear it a lot on other content creators' channels, which is absolutely normal, where they'll talk about this team has this fixture, this fixture, this fixture, they're okay. Or they'll group fixtures and say they're not too bad. And quite often you've got teams like Aston Villa in amongst it, or maybe Chelsea in amongst it. And they're very vague with... and we probably are too, right? There's a lot of vagueness around what constitutes a good fixture or a bad fixture. Even your fixture difficulty rating that you use for the fixture planning spreadsheet that you produce for the patrons, I'm assuming Nico's going to put those graphics up, the Skittles spreadsheet, as we like to call it, because it's so colourful, is a little bit subjective, right?
Of course it is. It's my opinion / bookmakers' odds. Exactly, a combination of the two.
Liverpool at home for Arsenal, for example. It's a difficult fixture, no doubt, because Liverpool top of the league right now, but it's at the Emirates. And so therefore, if I'm looking at it thinking, would I play Gabriel with Liverpool at home, or would I play Jacob Greaves with Brentford away, which on your fixture difficulty is a easier fixture on paper, because it's coloured yellow versus red, well, actually, I'm going to play Gabriel with Liverpool at home, right?
I agree
Because
with
of how
that.
good they defensively are. And then you've got Newcastle away, which is also a red fixture because St James's is not easy for anyone to go to. But the form that Newcastle have been in, and possibly injuries and so on, and the form that Arsenal have been in, I don't know if I consider that as difficult a fixture. So I do think the whole fixture difficulty thing is a little bit subjective. Like the two home fixtures that Liverpool have, and they're in your block of 7, right? Chelsea and Brighton.
But it's free. Villa at home as well.
Well, yeah, Villa I'd consider a little bit trickier, but then Villa is off the back of Champions League. So is that as difficult when they've got to travel as well? So when I look at that block of teams and I look at the fixtures that are actually there, the question then for me is, where do I move to? So I've got, for example, Smith Rowe. I don't want to transition to the teams that are top of your fixture tracking list, but Fulham, Ipswich, Southampton feature among that list. I've got Emile Smith Rowe, I've got Tyler Dibbling, I've got Jacob Greaves, and I've got plenty of players in that bottom half of the list where I've got double Arsenal, I've got Liverpool players, and so on. And even Aston Villa have a few trickier fixtures in amongst that, right? That when they come to your place, they've got Liverpool away. And when I ask myself the question, am I going to play those players with better fixtures over not? It's not always the case that I will. So I just think fixture difficulty is subjective, and you've got to kind of put it into your own context as to whether or not you will or won't.
Of course, absolutely.
That's the most difficult piece here. So if you're stuck with players from these teams, I guess it's what's your expectation quite often. What's your expectation? Because in any given game week of your 11 players, if you get 5 returns, you're likely to have had a good game week. And if you get
if
6,
one of them's your captain.
Well, yeah. And if you get 6 or 7 returns, you've done really well. So where are your likely returns going to come from that week? And quite often it might be that one of those better players is in that, if I get something, it's a bonus type mindset.
Yeah, I think a good way to look at this period is almost looking at it and going like, what's the worst each week? So I think we'd probably look at game week 8, and if you've got Semenyo, you're probably not liking that against Arsenal. And if you've got Chelsea players away to Liverpool, that's probably the worst of this forthcoming week. Now, benching Cole Palmer is not an option, is it?
No.
If you've got Palmer and Trent, if you've got Palmer and Trent like I have, you're just playing them both, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't like to play players against each other, but that's just what you're doing, isn't it?
It is at that level, yeah.
I think game week 9, the worst of it is for Liverpool. Arsenal away.
Yep.
But then to go back to your point, I think it's relative, right? So if I'm looking at it with what I've got, am I going to pick Trent away to Arsenal, or am I going to pick Wout Faes at home to Nottingham Forest? I'm probably still going to pick Trent.
Yep.
That would be my take. Now, if it's
Nottingham
a case
Forest
of...
have scored in almost every game. They've done well.
If it's a case that choice is versus Rico Lewis, then I'm going to take a chance and play Rico Lewis, aren't I? So it depends what you've got. It might also be that you go, I don't know, maybe something like Mickey van der Ven away to Crystal Palace. Maybe that's more of a debate. You go, okay, maybe I'm not going to play Trent, that sort of fixture. Personally, for me, Trent, I've been kind of screaming this the last couple of weeks, just play him in any game because of the relative. But if it was Konate, you'd want to bench that more, wouldn't you? Right?
Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think game week 10, again, rough for Semenyo. If you had any Brighton, it doesn't look good. Newcastle against Arsenal is not great.
I don't like that. I don't like the look at Newcastle, because Newcastle, you ally that with not great form so far this season so far. Bournemouth as well. They haven't been in bad form, but the Arsenal and City is rough.
And I think game week 11, obviously Villa going to Liverpool, and then Chelsea and Arsenal playing each other.
Mm.
So there's coverage there where it's kind of worse for all of them at some point, but obviously not all together in exactly the same week. So, this week, does it look bad for Newcastle players at home to Brighton? No. Does it look bad for Arsenal players away to Bournemouth? No. Am I bothered about Liverpool players at home to Chelsea? No. But as a collective, if you have real coverage of all these, then I think it is something that you'll want to look at. And for someone like me, who's a fixture head, like, I've got quite a bit of investment in these teams, right? I've got Palmer. I've got no Bournemouth. I've got treble Arsenal. I've got no Brighton. I've got double Liverpool, no Newcastle. So I've got quite a bit of investment in these teams, right? I've got Palmer. I've got no Bournemouth. I've got treble Arsenal. I've got no Brighton. I've got double Liverpool, no Newcastle. double Villa. So we've got quite a bit of investment in Villa, Liverpool, and Arsenal, and obviously Cole Palmer as a standalone. So I've got a lot there, Suj.
Mm.
But it also means I think a lot of other people do. I think probably big message over this period will be a lot of people look at their teams over the next couple of weeks and maybe not like it. That's going to go for a lot of people as well, right?
Yep. And those that will be brave as well and play players with better fixtures, like the likes that I mentioned even this week, like Jacob Greaves, Everton at home, Tyler Dibbling, Leicester at home. There could be reward to be had, but I think you've got to be pretty bold and confident to want to take that on when you've over a player from one of the bigger clubs.
Yeah, but if you've got like a Colwell and Greaves dilemma, for example, you probably play Jacob Greaves this week, wouldn't you?
Yep.
Yeah. If it's Trent versus Greaves, no, it's not. If you've got a Bournemouth player this week, perhaps a better one is like Semenyo. I mean, here's a better example, right? There'd be someone sitting there who's got, say, Semenyo at home to Arsenal, Rodgers away to Fulham, and Dibbling at home to Leicester. Like, if you were paying one of them,
Yep.
would you go Dibbling out of those three? Or do you look at Semenyo as kind of the Bournemouth talisman, and Rodgers obviously been really good on the eye this season?
When you say Semenyo has been the Bournemouth talisman, the official FPL account put a tweet out, I think it was yesterday, where it showed the highest point scorer from each team. And Tyler Dibbling is the highest Southampton point scorer with 18 points so far this season. So he's clearly their talisman.
They've only scored a couple of goals.
It's crazy, isn't it? When you're in 8 weeks or 7 game weeks, your top point scorer is on 18 points. That's barely 2.3 points.
It's also
a game,
worth
mate.
acknowowing he didn't start
He
the
didn't
first
play
couple, right?
a few games.
Yeah.
But Dibbling is as much talisman as Semenyo, maybe, for Southampton as it stands in the last few. I'd play Dibbling over Semenyo if I own.
And over Rodgers?
I am playing Dibbling over Rodgers this game week as it stands in my bus team. Rodgers is second on my bench. I've got Smith Rowe above Rodgers as well, but because Fulham are at home, Aston Villa are away.
Perhaps the wider debate here would be something like there'll be plenty of people with Saka, clearly after the last couple for Arsenal, as said near the top. Like, I'm pretty sure he'll be fit. Lee Carsley pretty much said he probably could have played for England yesterday, but they weren't going to obviously take a risk. So they'd sent him back, which is fair enough. So he's probably going to be okay. Mikel Arteta is not going to tell you either ways. You might as well just accept that now. But you look at the period of the 4 games. Now, clearly Saka's an outstanding player. Do you look at the next 4 though and go, oh, I could jump to Foden here? Kevin De Bruyne might be back for the weekend. I could jump to that. Heung-min Son might be back for Tottenham this week. And those two, to give it the flip, Tottenham and Man City obviously appear kind of at the top of the ticker. I don't think their runs are outstanding. Tottenham have got to play Villa. City have got to go to Bournemouth and Brighton. It's 3 away games for City out of the next 4. But those two appear near the top of the ticker over the next 4 and are obviously going to attract interest. So if you wanted Saka on the long term, do you consider jumping to Foden for the next 4 and going back or not?
I've got 2 frees going into this week. I'm trying to roll them. I wouldn't force it, James. I wouldn't force it. With Foden, I've not seen enough yet to say I would want to go there. I mean, he's not had any goal involvements yet this season, has he? Yeah, nothing. But I mean, fair play's played barely
good fixtures,
just
aren't
150 minutes. I don't know how City will set up in these games, and quite a few of the questions that we've had in on X are around City without De Bruyne and without Rodri. What does that mean? And I don't think I'd be doing that hokey cokey. You know, it was literally 2 weeks ago where Palmer was going off, Saka barely picked up anything, and the week after he reversed it. And this is not me pointing the finger, but you were saying, look, when Saka ever go off big, suddenly he's pulled up 3 attacking returns in a game and a 16-pointer. So I think he's capable. If we're talking about talisman, like, he's returned in every game this season, bar 1, I think, right? I don't think I'd be forcing that move. I don't think I'd be forcing it.
No, I'm not looking at a big problem. But what I had intended to do with my team at this point was flip one of Saka or Palmer to one of Foden, De Bruyne or Son. I have no will or want to do it. And yet I'm someone who is very focused on the fixtures.
Yep, it's understandable.
So I think value plays a part here as well, right? So Palmer's obviously going to keep getting continued investment now. Do you want to sell at this point? Oh, sugar, got Liverpool, Newcastle, Man United, Arsenal was the next four. Do you want to sell for a Foden when you know, almost irrespective of what Palmer does, the investment's going to keep coming just sheerly because of his value and the points he scored so far this season? That's a dangerous player to sell, isn't it, at this minute?
Yes, so I definitely would agree with you that the investment will keep coming, but I don't think it'll be enough to drive his price up. Like with the next block of four for Cole Palmer, for me as a non-owner, I think I can say like the likelihood of him hurting me by doing something stupid again is low. When by the time we get to Leicester in Game Week 12, I need to reconsider that. But in the next four, is his value likely to skyrocket to over 11 million? I think he's 10.8 now.
So you've not got Palmer, have you? You've got Saka.
Yes.
Okay, question for you. If Saka was ruled out,
Yes.
what do you do?
I'd find a way to get to Palmer.
So you still go Palmer with these fixtures rather than jump for Foden for a bit, as an example?
That's a good question. Would I see Palmer for me was a Game Week 12 decision. So would I go for someone over 3 or 4 weeks rather than him? I may even just look at Brennan Johnson.
And I thought you were going to say that.
Because I think that the home games, Ipswich and West Ham, and it hurts me to say, but I do think you'll win handsomely 3-1, something like that on Saturday.
Don't make me captain Solanke, you bastard.
I know. I think I would maybe just do that and then move it on and look for the bigger upside. I think when the opportunity was there, I think I'd actually do that.
Yeah, I think.
But I really want confirmation that Saka was long term.
I've got Palmer in play. I've got Palmer and Saka at the moment. But I think, yeah, if that was the case with Saka and just removed the Haaland chat for a minute, but if I was buying at that and I wanted to hold my structure together, I probably would actually dive to Brennan Johnson for the 4 Tottenham games, knowing that Arsenal got Forest at home in 12, and that's a nice point to then go back to Saka and you've missed his fixtures. So, but it's almost, I think it's generally frowned upon, the idea of, oh, can I leave 3.5 million in the bank for 4 weeks or so? People feel the need and the urge to have to spend it, don't they?
Well, for someone like
that's
you,
the structure we've learned from Sky, that this sort of play is okay.
It's okay. Yeah, someone like you who doesn't have robot means putting that much money in the bank makes him all the more potentially appealing. Like, well, if you're going to do that, you may as well get him and cover yourself off, particularly with your rank where you might want to be a little bit defensive on occasion. With the next two, could be painful.
Okay, lead in. So he's the best captaincy for the next 4 weeks, isn't he?
For the next 3, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't discount, depending on the form that you guys are in, Dominic Solanke for the Ipswich game at home, I think is a potentially really good captaincy shout. But yes, I think he is the best captaincy shout for the next few.
So Thursday night, I probably come at peace that I probably would get Haaland in. So I've got 1.6 million in the bank, 2 free transfers. And one of the big things for me around the period of the hat-tricks was sort of like West Ham hat-trick after the hat-trick against Ipswich was like, oh, okay, right, he's really on it. But it was going to be a -8 to get him in. And I said I needed to at least build to the point where it becomes like -4s. I'm in a position now where I can get him in for free. I can go Watkins to Haaland and Saka to Dibbling. I don't actually have to go that low, but I probably would, because I think Southampton got like Leicester and Everton and Wolves in 3 fixtures, where Morgan Rogers has got Fulham away, Tottenham away, and Liverpool away. So I'd look at that and go, well, I could play Dibbling over Rogers for those fixtures. It's actually possibly quite useful. Then flip Dibbling back up. The big one for me, the problem is, I said this previously, selling Haaland in 12 when he's got Tottenham at home just looks so ugly rough for me. I'll be at the Etihad. I don't need that in my life, I don't think. But I know others have got great fixtures. So I've been missing Saka against Forest, or if I decided to pull the plug on Palmer, I've been missing Palmer against Leicester. Liverpool go to Southampton. Like, it's not that far. I've got 1.6 million in the bank, right? So I'm not a million miles away from Salah with my current setup, for example. It'd only take Porro to 8 Nori, for example, and I can get into Mo then if I want. It's one of the reasons I really like the structure I've got at the moment. So with Saka hobbling off, on Thursday, and this was legitimate. He was feeling his hamstring, right? Was well, am I going to go into this and keep Saka in and still overlook Haaland? But I feel like from yesterday and Lee Carsley's comments, that's changed back again now. Where I'm pretty confident that Saka will play on Saturday. There's also rumours that Gabriel Martinelli's picked up a problem for Brazil. So I think, as a consequence, that possibly helps as well. So I don't really want to lose Saka. I'm quite happy to hold Saka and Palmer through these games. Saka's, I think, scored a couple at home to Liverpool historically as well. There's more the away games. And the one thing I would say about Saka over this period, the Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea, I know you mentioned about him hauling and stuff. I don't see him going big in them two away games, particularly Newcastle and Chelsea away. Liverpool at home could be like a 3-2 and he gets like a goal and assist. That's how it feels. Newcastle, Chelsea away, I don't see them being that sort of games.
Yeah,
I don't see him scoring well in them.
As much as I say you said that he wouldn't go big before the game, and he did. I agree with you. I don't. He's not. He's just not that mental 20-point kind of guy. Whereas Palmer is anytime. So I think you're right. The thing is, though, his consistency, though, you never see him getting nothing. Like you always know he's going to chip away with something. The amount of attacking threat that he carries, he's always in and around the box, taking shots. The corners, we can't discount that. I mean, how many of his points are from corners so far? Defensively, what do we take of defensive against corners like Bournemouth, Newcastle, Chelsea, Forest? Liverpool are obviously pretty decent. They've got size there, and Van Dijk and Konate can deal with corners reasonably well. But the others, I don't see him as particularly great. I think Arsenal will carry a threat in those games. So it's that consistency with Saka makes him difficult to sell.
Which is why I've currently still got him bust as captain this week.
Yeah, if you don't own Erling Haaland, then I can understand that.
My options for captaincy this week are Saka at Bournemouth, Jota at home to Chelsea. I fancy that game's going to have goals. Or Solanke against you. I don't want to. I know what you're going to. You captain Solanke against you.
I would.
Yeah, just don't see it being that sort of game, Suj.
If I didn't own Erling Haaland,
you're gonna rock up and you're gonna do your thing. I'm gonna do some analysis for Talking Tactics this week of how you won the fixture last season. And I think you'll probably set up quite similarly because surely, I realise it's a different manager, but surely he's going to look at it and go, "Oh, that worked quite well." Surely.
Yeah, but then there was the defensive mistake from Udogie, and you played into our hands with the 2 goals we scored. Were
catastrophic from our perspective.
Awful defending. So, yeah, but also you carry a much better attacking threat this year that you didn't last year. I think you're offensively stronger. Of course, you would be with having Solanke in there. So,
the setup's different, isn't it, with Kulusevski as well?
Yeah, but then would I rather have Kilman and Todibo than Aguerd and Zuma? Probably. Defensively, yes. I don't know.
I'll tell you my bus team at the moment. So Raya, Porro, Alexander-Arnold, Gabriel, Saka, Bumo, Palmer, Jota, Watkins, Solanke, Vardy. Vardy is not a long-term hold. I'm particularly looking at Matthias Cunha personally, sort of game week 10-ish or game week 11. Leicester's next 3 are okay, but I'm pretty much happy to cut Vardy after this one. I think Southampton away. Don't mind going Cunha a week early. Brighton away, knowing that I think there'll be some interest afterwards. The rest of the team, I'm pretty happy with, and that even goes down to Jota at the moment. Actually, it's been my opinion all through the summer and still is that if he's going to play number 9 for Liverpool, he will get returns, and clearly he's going to have a game here and there where he's going to miss out like he did in that fixture against Bournemouth. But he might be one that's quite handy for me on a couple of captaincies. Like, I don't mind punting him this week against Chelsea. Brighton at home in game week 10 is also an option for me. This week for captaincy is the worst. Of all the 4 weeks of taking on Haaland, I realise Southampton at home in 9 looks the ugliest. But I think in 9, I've got good alternatives. I've got Palmer at home to Newcastle feels perfectly reasonable for me. Watkins at home to Bournemouth is okay. And Mbeumo at home to Ipswich.
Yeah, and Mbeumo's another one that
I feel like I've got good alternatives. In 8, not so much. In 10, I don't mind captain Palmer at Manchester United. Really don't at all. Playing a similar position to where Dejan Kulusevski created 9 key passes in that fixture a couple of weeks ago. Yes, I know United got reduced to 10 men, but in terms of alternatives for that week as well, also look, Jota at home to Brighton is a possibility. My other alternatives in 10, not so good. Game week 11, you'd mentioned about Solanke at home to Ipswich. That's one I'd feel more comfortable in. Boomo at home to Bournemouth, another alternative. I'd probably be quite happy with Solanke 11. Also, I feel like I might land with Cunha at home to Southampton, and I don't mind even attacking that as a bit of a rogue captaincy in game week 11. So the worst one for captaincy feels like this week. This is the first week. I said this last week on a piece I did. This coming week will be the first time I've felt really uncomfortable in a captaincy choice this season. And that obviously draws back towards Haaland.
When I look at my bus team, my bench says it all. In that, I think it's strong, not bench boostable strong, but strong. I've got Flecken in goal, Manchester United away. I don't love it, but
We sure have a keeper.
Valdemarson, so
Okay.
it's neither here nor there. I'm playing a back four: Gabriel, Trent, Porro, Rico Lewis. Midfield three: Saka, Dibbling, and Bomo. I'm in a front three of Solanke, Haaland, and Watkins. And then
Love that front three.
bench is Smith Rowe, Morgan Rogers, and then Jacob Greaves with the Everton at home fixture. Like,
Benching Smith Rowe at home to Villa.
would you bench Smith Rowe at home to Villa or Dibbling at home to Leicester?
I'd maybe bench Rico Lewis.
Or Wolves away? No, I don't think so. I think I'm going to play Rico Lewis, I think I'm going to play Rico Lewis. I think there's a clean sheet there to be had for Man City.
I'm pretty sure Smith Rowe come back in the team. Just a quick note on Fulham, by the way. 'Cause I know a lot of
I do
injuries.
too, by the way. I do
that?
too. I do
What?
think Smith Rowe will be back in the team as well.
Oh, yeah. It's just Man City away. It's just they set up differently. Be back in the team. They lost Sasa Lukic over the weekend. Is likely to miss about a month with a shoulder injury. I presume Sanderberg will come into the team in his place, but that might have a little bit of a destabilizing effect. But they got really good fixtures for them. We covered their midfield options on Clash of Correspondence last week. That the underlying of like Traore, Iwobi, Smith Rowe, and Pereira is all better than Morgan Rogers, which is crazy. I wouldn't want to bench Smith Rowe in that fixture, I don't think. So particularly if Ezri Konsa might be out, we think he might be back now, but we're not sure at this stage.
I'm going to back Dibbling. I feel like when you've got these players in and around, if I can't play Dibbling at Leicester at home, it's kind of
You don't have to
though
play
I know
him, do you? He's
cheap as
4.6, man.
chips. He's cheap as chips. Yeah, I do get that.
I think I'd play Smith Rowe over Diblin, I think.
That's how I'm kind of set up at the moment, and 2 frees going into this week as well. So
I can see why you're thinking of rolling.
I'm not going to make a transfer. No, I'd just if I was to get news that Saka's out, I'm going to play Smith Rowe. If I get news that Rogers, I could play Rogers. Yeah, I wouldn't need to force it. If Saka was long term, then sure, but we know he's not because Carsley said he's not. So.
Yeah, for me, it's either working the transfers in to put the big robot in or I'm possibly rolling as well. I could jump even like Rogers to Johnson and bench, say, Vardy, but then these little moves, one of the moves with Haaland as well, it cuts me off for Cunha, and I really think that's the third forward I want for a long period because their fixtures are great, right? Pretty much up to New Year once you hit roundabouts game week 10.
He's been doing well so far as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like Matthias Cunha as an option. I said that a few times recently. So that's kind of on radar for me with what I've got in the bank. That's comfortable, Vardy to Haaland. If I went the Dibbling and the Haaland move, I can't go Vardy to Haaland. To Cunha, sorry.
To Cunha.
Can't
Not enough money.
I'd be short.
And you're not.
Is that what I'm going to do?
Solanke?
Not get Haaland because I want Cunha? Like, it's absurd, isn't it? Where you ranked again, James? Like, it's madness. I get it. But it's interesting. My instinct on a lot of this is because the players are so powerful and I don't want to lose them longer term, I'm quite happy to hold them through this period. So think of like the power players from the 7 teams that have got it kind of really tough. Watkins feels absolutely fine to hold through this run, right? Sure, I could completely get maybe particularly Tottenham, Liverpool. You would maybe want to dive off and dive back on, maybe even to Solanke for those 2 and then back on if you didn't have that, for example. If Isak was fit and playing well, I'd be happy to have him. In fact, my kind of pre-Haaland take on was the idea that I would captain Isak this week at home to Brighton. That's obviously not an option at the moment. Sally, you happy holding? Yeah, Trent,
Yep.
the Arsenal players that you find to hold, but you're analysing going, how big do I think they score? Semenyo's one. I think there's so many good alternatives at that price bracket, and we've mentioned some of them, that I can understand the will to want to jump on. And what I'd said to people with Semenyo before they played Southampton was consider the outcome if he doesn't do great over these next two, what you're going to feel looking at Arsenal at home, Villa away, City at home. So that would be a temptation. But then again, if you've got something like Dibbling, you possibly built in where you're benching him this week. And then Cole Palmer, I think, speaks for itself at the moment. But even Jackson, if you had Jackson, would you be desperate to move at the moment?
No. Chelsea attacking, I've got no problems with.
High scorers,
I mean,
aren't
one of the questions that we had in, and I don't have it in front of me, so forgive me, I can't pinpoint who asked it, but was, are there certain fixtures that support defensive versus attacking for any particular teams? Chelsea attacking for me, and let's say the majority of the ownership is Palmer and Jackson. No problem. Even going up against Liverpool or Arsenal or any of the bigger teams, I back them to score. They're a threat going forward. So, for example, Nicholas Jackson, yeah, I wouldn't be under big pressure to move that on.
The attacking players are much better to keep here as well. I think we've got exceptions here. We've mentioned Trent and Gabriel, right? Reality is, if you own those players, unless you want to move Trent particularly for money reasons, and if that's the reason, then I understand it. But I'm generally happy to keep those two players. So just I take the shit with the good with them, right? It'll be what it'll be. Gabriel, what's he got over the last 2 weeks? 3 points or something?
Mm.
You know what happens when people bench him at Newcastle, right? It's the 15-pointer again, isn't it? So I'm generally quite happy to play them in these difficult fixtures, but the majority of other defenders I wouldn't be, right? Would I be so comfortable to play Timber in some of these fixtures for Arsenal? It's not the same threat, is it? If Kanate was the one that I'd mentioned earlier. Do you want Ezri Konsa for Tottenham away, Liverpool away? No, you don't. If you're on Colwell or you've gone Sanchez, if you're a Sanchez owner looking at these fixtures, that does look a bit horrible. But it's also worth saying, like Chelsea's another great example. Once you hit game week 12, then fixtures become really good. So I feel like for the majority of people here, it's just a case of take your medicine and suck it up and take whatever comes over the next 4 weeks because you'll be in a stronger position afterwards. That team I showed earlier with the kind of the players from the 7 teams that have all got difficult fixtures, guess what happens once you hit 12? That same team with
swings
could even look like a wildcard team once you hit sort of game week 12. So, yeah, that's me spilling my water everywhere, by the way, because I still haven't got Haaland.
It's only water. Should we look at some of the questions that we've had in on
You've
Tinternet?
definitely done worse.
That is very true. Coffee on laptops or tablets and stuff has happened before. Should we look at some of these questions, James?
Yeah, go on.
Because they do raise a few interesting topics. And I think the overriding theme of the pod is summed up by Ian Parron. Is the next 4 game weeks going to be class is permanent, keep the better players from the good teams, or form is temporary? Like just go with what's top of the fixture ticker.
Yeah. So one of the big things, say with me without Haaland at the moment, and I think he's best for all of these weeks coming up for captaincy, is well and good for me to look at it. One of the things I was trying to do is measure it and say Haaland captain versus Saka and Watkins. So Haaland effective twice in each week does outscore Saka Watkins over the 4 weeks. And I mean, look at the fixture and go, yeah, sure he does. But does he do it by enough for me to justify what will effectively be 4 transfers? Because I do want to continue taking him on, even if I don't over this short period. I also know once he goes in, he's going to be mad difficult to sell because of what I said. Game week 12, you go, oh, Tottenham at home, don't want to sell. So you go, oh, game week 13 is Liverpool away. Yeah, but once you land in 13, the other fixtures for the players that I might want to go back into don't look quite so good. Like I'm going back into what Watkins would be part of the move, I presume, away to Chelsea. Doesn't feel so right. And you think, well, hang on. Am I making this move at the right time? And then if you go beyond that, then his fixtures are really good and he stays. And I really like the structure more without him. I know how powerful he is, etc. And it's why I might continue to say I take him on and know that over this period, yeah, I'm going to have some dips. I feel like if I go without Haaland, there's clearly going to be weeks where I get slapped to pieces. But there also will be a week now and again where you have like what's just happened and it slaps really good for me. I'm going to yo-yo a bit, aren't I, if I go without him? Whereas I
It'll
could put him
balance out.
in.
Yeah.
I could put him in and I can probably defend rank better at the moment. But I still feel like it's a bit early in the season to be talking that way.
I also think with the teams that have better fixtures, they're the teams that quite a lot of us have enablers from already anyway. Like Fulham, a lot of people still own Robinson maybe as your cheap defender. Everton, some people went on McNeil or Mikalenko's flitting about in quite a few teams. Ipswich, Greaves or Leif Davis has got reasonable ownership. Even Southampton with Dibbling. If you have cheap players from these teams and in the coming fixtures, you'd rather play the players from the better teams anyway. It's answered your question for you because we do have the opportunity to play players from these teams in the next few weeks and they've got the better fixtures. And if we still choose not to, then you're kind of answering the question for yourself there, right? You'd rather go with class is permanent.
I agree, but let's look at it a different way. Which player would you rather have for the next 4 weeks? Brennan Johnson or Bukayo Saka?
Brennan Johnson.
Okay, so it's
Brennan
interesting,
Johnson.
isn't it?
But I don't see Brennan Johnson as an enabler. I don't see him in the bracket of the.
But I also
Because
don't see.
I think Brennan Johnson. If I own Brennan Johnson, I'd be playing him 9 weeks out of 10.
I
think
don't
I'd be
see
playing
me
him more
wanting
often than
to make that transfer to then go back to Saka.
No.
And like again, that's the value of the two transfers. Would Johnson outscore Saka enough to make me feel like selling Saka for him and then going back to him would be worthwhile? Unless I decided, right, Johnson's going to be like a long-term pick for me and maybe I want Havertz as my attacking Arsenal player rather than Saka. If I was looking for that sort of thing, then yeah, sure, maybe. It's also circumstantial though, right? Isn't it? So, because I think if you were wildcarding in 12, and a few people will, I think, you would attack that move. I think.
Yeah.
You'd be more inclined to attack
To dead end
Johnson,
towards 12.
Foden, Rico Lewis, even Pedro Porro. You'd that would be top of your agenda, I think. I think if I was wildcarding in 12, I'd really be looking at trying to get heavy into Tottenham and Manchester City over these next 4. And you'd also be looking at players from other teams who are good over this period. So I think someone like Chris Wood as a nice forward over the next 4. Forest have got 3 home fixtures, an away game at Leicester. Dwight McNeil at Everton. Liam Delap at Ipswich. Maybe Leicester. I'd arguably want to punt something at Manchester United. I feel the biggest problem with Manchester United is their fixtures obviously get good now. One of their players is going to do really well over this period, I think.
Who?
But I don't know whether it's going to be Højlund, Fernandes, Garnacho, or Rashford. I don't know which one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's going to be
liable
Ahmad
to stay clear
Diallo,
of it.
mate. It's going to be Diallo, watch. And
I
everyone's
don't
going to
think
own
it'll
all
be
the others.
Ahmad Diallo. It'll probably be like Delit or something, won't it?
A good question coming in from Auto Reclose. Darren, do you factor in that some teams have 7 games, James, including the cup games over the next few weeks, whereas some teams only have 4 games? Obviously, the European teams, City, Villa, Liverpool, Arsenal, yourselves, Manchester United, Chelsea, have some European games in that period as well.
Yes, but in a weird and ironic way, because the Premier League games are quite tough for a few of these teams, it feels safer. Like, for example, I don't look at Jota this week and think, oh, it's Chelsea at home Sunday. They might rest him and save him for the Champions League game midweek. I look at this week pretty confident that Jota plays, for example. With the Arsenal players, that doesn't feel like an issue at all. You just know their core players, as Clates always talks about, Gabriel Saliba, Raya, Saka. I think Havertz is part of that now. We're kind of in agreement with that. These guys are pretty much going to play nearly every game. If they were going to get rested, it's probably for Arsenal, it's Shakhtar Donetsk next week rather than the Premier League game. Whereas maybe for City, ironically, and this isn't to scare people, but maybe for City, it's not quite that. I know a lot of people want to triple captain Haaland in game week 9. And I understand that. I'm not going to talk anyone out of it, by the way. I would just have a consciousness not locking yourself definitively into that decision purely because they play Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. The Southampton game is the Saturday. They play Wolves away this Sunday. Sparta Prague at home is a good fixture in the Champions League next Wednesday. Southampton at home Saturday is a good fixture. That bit of it, Sunday, Wednesday to Saturday, this is how you can spin narratives. Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday is 3 games in 6 days. That's a bit concerning. But then you flip your narrative the other way. What have City got afterwards? Oh, it's Carabao Cup game away to Tottenham. And Guardiola said he wouldn't give a shit about it. So does Haaland get 390 minutes and then know he's got a clear period of a week off before City's next game? And it feels to me more like the latter.
I would agree with you.
But I wouldn't definitively lock into I'm definitely triple captain Erling Haaland in game week 9 until that Sparta Prague game had gone. And I felt comfortable that everything was fine. And I think at that point, if there was any concern from a minutes perspective, you'd go no and know that there'll be another opportunity for someone else further down the line. But the fact there's a Carabao Cup game afterwards, and I think that's important for a lot of the key players anyway, is that Carabao Cup midweek between 9-10 gives a bit of a break. You've also got some players obviously not competed on international duty here at all, right? So you've got between 8 and 9 is European fixtures, between 10 and 11 is European fixtures, between 9 and 10 is Carabao Cup. So it feels like it's split, where you've got the key players will play 3 games, kind of midweek break, 3 games, then international break again. So I feel like over this period, rotation shouldn't be too much of a problem. There's obviously the usual caveats this weekend with players returning from international duty and stuff, particularly those who go earlier in the week. Paquetá go away Brazil, Suj?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure.
I'd have thought so. And say there's every chance he doesn't start at Tottenham. That's a completely non-fantasy relevant, but there's an impact to that. Garnacho, we know, pulled out of Argentina duty. So I don't know if that leaves him more likely to play this weekend or not.
Yeah, I didn't actually look. The club usually share on socials and stuff who's going away, but I'm so tuned out of international football that I didn't actually look to see if he had been called up for them. There's quite a few questions. I will look into that.
He played, and guess what?
He got a yellow card.
Yeah, 100%. He played in a victory in Chile, and yes, got booked.
Yeah.
After 3 minutes.
Although West Ham have employed the services of Nick DeMarco, so we know that Paqueta's career is safe.
Yes. Let's cover that on Wednesday.
A couple of questions here that I'm going to merge into one. Lewis McKenzie and Luke Edgerton, I should say, are talking about Manchester City. What's the real impact on City without Rodri and KDB? Caveat that KDB could be back. And Luke wants to know if this away day at Wolves could be a potential banana skin for City, with everyone talking about it as a banker for them and for Erling Haaland. I think the interesting thing with this fixture is that Arsenal will have played the night before. So if Arsenal win, City know that they need to win to keep
City
up.
will just expect Arsenal to win.
Yeah, I understand that. Liverpool
won't change anything psyche for them. It
will be later.
More likely change if Arsenal lost.
Oh, to say we can push ahead here a little bit. Liverpool obviously play later. It is Sunday, not Saturday. Gives the players an extra day to get back and get fresh from international duty, although a lot of European players won't be travelling that far. I can't see it. I think just with the injury issues that Wolves have as well defensively, I can't see them slipping up. I just don't see it.
I've said that I think there's a surprise City result coming around the corner. I think the Bournemouth game is the most likely for that over this period, even more so than the Brighton game. I think in the Brighton game, they'll create chances quite comfortably. The Bournemouth game, they really do energise themselves well for a good 70 minutes, and then they'll probably retreat. I think that's a sticky one for City. Bournemouth away. That might be the one that causes them trouble, that historically that has not been a bad fixture for them over the years, actually. But on the face of it, you look at City, and if you're a City fan looking at the next four, even though three are away, I think anything less than 10 points, you're disappointed.
Yep. FPL Legend asks a question around enablers and the teams with better fixtures, specifically Ipswich and Leicester, who are side by side on your fixture ticker, James. Leif Davis and Liam Delap versus Justin and Vardy, or mix it up.
Say that again. Leif Davis and Justin.
No, Davis and Delap or Justin and Vardy.
I
So
would say
double Ipswich or double Leicester, or mix it
James
up.
Justin.
Delap over Vardy.
Has had returns recently, right? He scored twice at the Emirates, one an absolute worldie, one a deflection. And he's given Buonanotte the assist in a victory against Bournemouth, where he's given the ball like in a wide area, 30 yards from goal, and the young boy Buonanotte's done the rest. So element of fortuitous nature, I think, in Justin's return so far. Whereas Davis is he up most for big chances created from defenders or something? Like his underline is really good. He's right up there. I think actually it would just be the Ipswich double up.
I agree. Yeah.
The problem with that is, and this is where it does get different thinking about fixtures, is I don't know if you want to look at those two when you go to Tottenham in 11. So how we analyse an Ipswich player of a difficult fixture is really difficult to how we analyse our Trents and Gabriels and Sakas and stuff like that, right? Do you want to look at that Ipswich double up away to Tottenham 11? You might go, could be with Delac particularly, you'd always go, well, I know that strikers will always get a chance against Tottenham. Yes, that's true. And Davis may well create, but do you really want to look at it? That's all. I think over the next three, it's great. And it's worth saying for Ipswich, their fixtures on the whole are really good. I think pretty much up till Christmas. Got one of the best runs between now and then. So if you're going, look, again, Tottenham 11, okay, take it. It will be what it will be. Fine. I think between that, I'd just be going the Ipswich players rather than Leicester at the moment. Don't worry. That's our clash of correspondence prior to game week 10 as well.
Oh, lovely. We get to listen to the boys then. I think I'm with you. I'd go Ipswich. Don't trust. Jamie Vardy was, I feel like that was a bullet that I dodged. When I was looking at that a few weeks ago, you went on it. I didn't. I feel like that's definitely a bullet I've dodged. They've got in game week 9 Nottingham Forest at home. Forest defensively are dogged. I think that's going to be a difficult fixture. I actually back Forest to win that. Whereas the two home fixtures for Ipswich, Everton and Leicester, I back them to win those. And I think they will score a couple of goals at your place. That they weren't great against us away. They did kind of fizzle out. But it's a very different style of game playing you. So I think, yeah, I'm with you. I'd go with the double.
I'd go the Ipswich players. Both.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely Davis over Justin for me, comfortably. And to be honest, I can't think of a reason why I'd pick Vardy over Delap at this stage either. So yeah, definitely the Ipswich guys.
Ash says, are we encouraged to take more risks at different points this season, e.g. no Haaland from day one for James, jumping on a 5% owned Foden before others ahead of game week 8. Do you believe this is partly due to no clear template team this year?
Isn't there a clear template team? Is it just because probably a better way to define that is probably template team with Haaland and template team without Haaland?
Without Haaland, yeah. Possibly.
And the majority will have that template with Erling Haaland, right?
Yep.
So if you look, there's a lot of people like yourself, obviously, without Palmer at the moment, right? But if you looked in ownership in the top 10K, which is understandable because people have owned him, that's part why they're there. His ownership in the top 10K is about 90%, right?
Huge.
So it depends where you're looking at the moment. I would say that template is forming. And I don't think it will break massively over this period. Like I said, I think people like me wanted to go Saka to Foden or Saka to Son at this point and don't feel like they want to do it. The other thing is I also feel I don't feel like I have to make that decision this week. So that Saka away to Bournemouth is still a reasonable fixture, isn't it? If Sonny's back firing at the weekend and I think, actually, do you know what? I do want to punt Sonny for these 3 weeks against Saka's 3 weeks, then I can still make that move next week. Similar with Foden, actually, as well. Or maybe even if KDB's back, that's also part of my thinking in terms of, again, if I commit to Haaland, all this shit it's off the table for me, right?
That's true, unless you give up Saka and Palmer to get Haaland and KDB.
I'm not giving up Palmer at the moment. If I get Haaland in, it's fairly obvious what my move was. Saka and Watkins are both going. It's the only way, really, I'm doing it. I know.
Sure. Yeah, it is grim.
But I am also a fixture head who wants to attack the fixtures, and I can't not look at that. Again, Haaland, 4 captaincies versus Saka and Watkins. Does Haaland outscore those 2 players? I think the answer is yes. But is it enough for the value of the 4 transfers? 4 transfers, mate.
Yeah. Right.
There's 4 transfers, which if I pick up other problems might become hits, and then it's not happening.
It's also Wolves and Southampton, and then Bournemouth. It's 3 captaincies.
It's 4. I'd get the armband at Brighton for me in 11 as well.
So 4 captaincies.
Yeah, if he goes in, I captain
versus
him every
2
week.
hits.
To be honest, I think he stays in for me in 12, and I just captain him against Tottenham as well.
Yeah, that would be sensible. Rob Pitt, given his ownership,
but at least 12 does have great alternatives like Palmer at Leicester, Salah at Southampton, Saka against Forest.
Given his ownership and the structure, how often do you think people should be happy to start Morgan Rogers over the next 4? Should he drop back to becoming the 8th attacker? For me, he's 7th attacker, though I'm playing Dibbling over him this week at Fulham away. I'll play Morgan Rogers for Bournemouth at home. I think that's perfectly fine. And I actually think Tottenham away for Aston Villa, what he does in that direct running at the back 4, I'm sure he'll have space against you guys. I feel like it's a good fixture for him. So I'd play him 2 out of the next 3, and I wouldn't play him Liverpool away, and I wouldn't play him Arsenal. So I'll probably play him 2 out of the next 5.
Did you know that the current number 1 in the world, Suj, triple captained Morgan Rogers?
I didn't know that. When?
Game week 4, I believe.
Okay. I didn't know that, James.
No, he didn't return big that week. Anyway, moving on. It's going to be subjective to what you've got in the rest of your team, right? It's literal, as simple as that. So if I ended up on this Dibbling path, for me, then I think I would pick Dibbling certainly in the Leicester and Everton home games rather than Rodgers away to Fulham and Tottenham. And then got that far, it's probably Dibbling for me away to Wolves rather than Rodgers away to Liverpool as well, under that circumstance. Now, if I stick with the strategy I've got, he's probably 8th attacker for me. I mean, here's one for you. Would you play Rodgers at home to Bournemouth or Vardy at home to Forest in 9?
I'd play Rodgers, but then I'm a little bit down on Vardy.
I get that, and Forest obviously defensively good numbers so far this season.
Yeah, I'll play
right?
Rodgers. I'll play Rodgers.
Yeah, I'd probably play Vardy, and I'd probably be playing Vardy this week. Southampton away. I don't know if I'd forgive myself leaving the player out against them at the moment, actually. So for me, he could sit as my 8th attacker, and it might be that I don't start him at all over this period. But what a great first sub if that's the case.
Yeah, and the price that most people have bought him in at 5 million. Like,
yeah, there isn't really a feeling from my perspective to move him on. All I'd say is if I did end up on this route with Dibbling, I have to have an awareness that the money becomes tight, right? Like I said, I can't go Vardy to Cunha. But if I end up selling Rodgers back to a Saka rather than a Dibbling, then it opens up a bit more money elsewhere, where then if Dibbling becomes my 8th attacker, and it might be by that point Rodgers is at 5.4 and we go, right, I'm going to bank to 0.2 here and I'm just going to accept it and move it on. But I think generally speaking, he's a great long-term hold. And again, you look at Villa's fixtures from game week 12 and I go, oh yeah, I really want Morgan Rogers over that period. So this is why from those 7 teams, a lot of what you sell now, you're going to want back in 4 weeks.
FPL Bobo, a couple of questions throughout the show, James. A couple of questions around bigger picture thinking and maybe even you specifically. What do you make of the 1,717 clones of a content creator squad that are scattered throughout the top 1 million and 200 plus in the top 1,000? Should content creators stop doing team reveals in the hours leading up to deadlines to stop the cloning, as it is definitely not good for the game? Is there a content creator that's got 200 clones in the top 1,000.
Yeah, I've seen it. I forget who it is, but yeah, I've seen that.
Wow.
They're all exactly the same teams and stuff. Yeah.
I mean,
But
at
then I
this
also
stage,
think, great, that's not one person in front of me. That's 200 people. That's one person's. I've only got to beat one, and I'm beating 200. Great.
yeah, that is surprising. I didn't realize that that was such a problem. I almost thought when I read this, it was talking about your team. I've got no
It's not
clones.
as if anyone's copying me, you nutter.
I've got I've got no clones of my team in the top million.
I don't think I do. Clones. Uh, there's 4 clones of me apparently in the top 1 million. I will have a look to see if they've got exactly the same team as me, but I'd find it very unlikely. Also, one thing with me as well. So I obviously do a deadline stream and I put my team up, and I'm quite open telling people what I'm going to do. Very occasionally, I make a decision near deadline. I'm not bothered. I'm also not bothered of people copying me for 2 reasons. One, they shouldn't copy me. That's a bit foolish considering my historical ranks. Two, there are points during the season where I'll make an early transfer and people won't know about it. So I always feel like there'll come a point, like, I bought Gabriel on that Sunday night, and he's gone up in price that night. And then the next morning, yeah, I bought Gabriel last night. Right. So the copycats are not going to be brave enough probably to make that move. They would have probably known that I really wanted to get Gabriel, but might not have been certain which player was selling to do so. So, because it wasn't certain whether I'd move, say, Robertson or Pedro Porro, for example. So I think I would have got rid of people there. And at some point, if people have followed my path, at some point, they're probably zero point 0.1 behind me. And there'll come another point in the near future where they're also going to end up more money behind me. And at some point, it'll get cut off simply from that perspective. Content creators are entitled to do with whatever they want with their content. What's happening with other teams is not their responsibility. They want to put their teams up, tell everyone what they're doing. It's absolutely fine. If we've seen this before with, say, Andy Mears, where there was a lot of teams copying him, and eventually, obviously, he did something near the end of a deadline, didn't he? And some people got angry about it because they wanted to copy him. Well, he had to give him the slip, literally, right? So because he was doing so well at the time. So
Yeah,
it's also 7 weeks gone. Like, okay, if people want to copy it, fine. Like, they're getting no enjoyment from the game. Like, good luck to them. If that's what's important to them, they're winning their mini leagues with their mates where they've got money on, etc., because they're copying a content creator. Great. There'll also be people out there copying content creators, perhaps not doing so well at the moment and not doing so well. So, yeah, I certainly I would never tell any content creator what to do with their content.
no, and it's FPL tips underscore FPL tips that's being copied.
It is an
and
amazing
he
season. Yeah.
is one of the earliest content creators in FPL as well. I remember speaking to him back at the first FCA. We're talking like 4 or 5 years ago. Like, it's over 1,000 videos on his YouTube channel. It's not like someone who's just jumped in on the scene and what have you. What do you do? There's nothing you can do about it. They're not breaking the rules. So yeah,
reality is he'll be aware of it. So
Yep.
he knows he's got 200 teams on his tail. If you generally, it's going to think it's game week 7, so it's like, or going into game week 8, it's not worth worrying about. But if he did end up in a similar position to where he is now, come game week 34 or something, he's got to make a decision, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly that. Right. Now's not the time to be worrying about it. And it wouldn't surprise me if a large chunk of those teams just drop off as well. Like, people get bored or they miss a deadline, or is that only just me that misses deadlines, James?
I don't think you missed one yet, have you?
Not this season, but it's only 7 weeks in.
Got a few Friday deadlines coming up soon, Boss. You're going to be all right.
Probably not. And so moving it on to the last question of the show, which Frank Taggity asks, would a content creator winning FPL be good or bad for the game?
Depends who it is.
You say, would it be good or bad for the game? I mean, define good or bad for the game. What, more people playing it, or?
You watched Tangent when I went on Jace?
Yes.
Yeah. So me and Nick from the brilliant FPL Juice were talking on their spin-off Tangent about, my historical rank not being great in FPL and stuff like that. No digging, just a general open conversation. And my point has always been, it's like, what has it changed in my life if I finish 10K or like a million? Like, what changed at the end of it? Nothing. I'm still the same person with the same things going on in my life. Nothing really changed. It's good or it's bad. And then we just move on to the next one. And so the only thing that me having a good rank does achieve is I got more dickheads on my tail. That's it, basically. I can see that my followers on socials, etc. More dickheads on my tail because James is doing all right at the moment. So the reality is, depends who wins it.
Anybody that's won in the last 3, 4, 5 seasons will end up doing a podcast / YouTube tour anyway. Like, you end up inevitably, the person that's come first in the world will appear on most of the other shows and channels. And most of those shows and channels have big viewership, and it doesn't affect the game good or bad either way, does it necessarily? So quite a lot of people have good seasons and then decide to get into the content creation space. So I think it would affect it in no way, shape or form whatsoever. I still think that it's the minority of players that play for overall rank. I think the majority of players play for mini leagues, work mini leagues, school mini leagues. Everyone's a mini league manager as opposed to an overall rank manager. So yeah, I don't think it'd make any difference whatsoever overall, James.
Well, I'm top of that mini league that matters at the moment. So
the correspondence mini league, James, is the one we want to win. I'm 10th, which is not great, but it's quite tight there at the moment still, other than you, which is a big 27-point lead at the moment.
Nosebleed.
Indeed.
Don't worry, that's about to get eradicated the second I make the decision not to buy Haaland this week.
Let's see. James, do you want to tell the listeners what they've got to look forward to for the rest of the week?
Yes, people's poll vote is out till roundabouts 5 o'clock-ish today. Me and Clates are going to be focusing on a period of England management from the past. You can either choose to vote for the period of Glenn Hoddle, Kevin Keegan, Steve McLaren, or Fabio Capello. On Wednesday, be the Clates and James show, where we might talk a little bit of current England, also a few topics. Might even cover off something interesting about FPL Challenge at the moment, Suj. Thursday clash of correspondence this week, just to make my life even more difficult, is Wolves versus Manchester City with Bradley Parker and Johnny Pringle. I'll be streaming with Ask James on Friday. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. Content this week from Intermediate Plus tier is a Q&A today. We've got a quiz tomorrow, Tottenham Planet FPL Derby preview on Wednesday, Money in Football on Thursday, on Marseille's Champions League triumph and an old Ligue 1 triumph from 1993, and we'll have our Game Week 8 preview podcast on Friday, which will be me coming up with a decision on what I am or what I'm not doing, I should imagine.
Good. Looking forward to seeing whether you decide to give in and join Robot Crew.
I don't want to, but I don't know.
Then don't.
Right. No, there's that, isn't it? I feel that. I don't want to get him in. I enjoy this period of invigorating, knowing that he's going to kill me at any time. It's quite exciting. Although the next two look particularly bad, let's be honest.
Good. Patrons, listeners, supporters, make sure you're subscribed wherever you are listening to the show. Hit the notification bell. As soon as any of that additional content that James has talked about goes live, you will hear about it. Supporting the show is patreon.com/Planet FPL. The spreadsheet that you see, the graphics from the Skittles spreadsheet with all of the fixtures, is available to patrons if you want to support the show. Not only does it have James's fixture difficulty rating, it shows the cup games. There's like about 15 tabs on there that show when the cup games are, when the European games are, the spacing between fixtures, and all of that kind of stuff as well.
Post-match ex-FPL points from James's team.
There's
if anybody understood what I just said, listen to Friday's differential show.
Yeah. You've also got gaffer information on there for people that want to play that, championship fixtures as well, the additional shows, prize leagues, Slack community, so much more that you can come and be a part of.
No ads. We never sell that either. Basic tier, no ads, boss. And early releases.
Yeah.
Everything goes out earlier on Patreon, except for the live streams and without ads.
Yes, indeed. Although for some, that's not a bonus, James, and that's just a little spoiler on today's first question that you're going to hear on the Q&A with Clayton.
Was it
In the
bad?
meantime, though, stay safe, look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Play it your way. Cue music, please. Man child.